Hello?
Hello, Jughead. This is Archie. Come over right away. It's a matter of life or death.
Oh, relax, Archie.
Attention, all true believers. Marvel Comics is on the air.
A friend of the unfortunate, enemy of criminals. In reality, Dan Garrett, a rookie patrolman, loved by everyone but suspected by none of being the Blue Beetle.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive, impervious to bullets.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. It's Miss Jen. It's been a while since we've had you here for Talkin' Shop. And we're starting it out with a bang as we come back and try to make sure we get this going for you guys all the time with really quality guests, really top-notch fun stuff. And like always, we're trying to get you some information about what is coming up, so that you can tell your favorite place, your local comic shop, early enough that you can get your copies when they release. And maybe if there's some special covers you might like, you can let them know. And then you don't have to sweat it when, they're coming out, because you'll be like, it's already in my box because my LCS loves me and they make sure to get me all the cool stuff. This week, we've got special guest, Thomas Healy, longtime editor-in-chief for Spawn Comics, touched all those titles, not just the main title. So he's to thank to make sure that everything runs smoothly and you get your very favorite thing to read. It's really dark, right? But so good. All right, everybody, do some liking and sharing. Get all your friends in the room. Remember, Talkin' Shop is an interactive show. So if you have questions, you should type them up and put them in the comments. Other side. Sorry. So get them up there. We'll see you guys in just a second. Everybody, it's Miss Jen. Like always, I'm so happy to see you guys. Welcome to Talkin' Shop, Mr. Thomas Healy.
Miss Jen, thank you so much for having me today.
You have a way cooler background than mine.
Anything comics. This is just various pieces that I have collected over the years, going back to when I was a retailer, much like yourself, over here in Phoenix.
Oh, man. Okay, so it looks like what you're collecting is original art. Is that still your love?
Yeah. I have a really small but historic house in Phoenix, Arizona. It's on the historic registry, but there's just not a lot of space. And as someone who worked at a comic book shop, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with your collection. So I sold most of my physical issues off. I keep the keys that I really want to keep. The important stuff and some of the trades, but yes, my collecting stuff has kind of transitioned over to original art and pages and stuff, simply because it's easier to find space for them.
Really, truly. Harder to find actual things, but easy to find space for.
Yeah,
So,
and the industry's changing too, so more and more people are going digital. So original art it's getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, I think it's a smart thing to collect if you're looking for something like, hey, I own the only one of these. It's way different than if I've got the best, graded copy on the registry for this book. Still awesome, but not as awesome as the original art.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's talk origin story for you a little bit. It's always very interesting to me about how people enter the comic book world. Some people that I talk to have been lawyers and then also kind of got drawn in by their love of comic books and started, writing awesome stories. Or they just always loved them as a kid and that was their goal all their life. How did you first get introduced to comics? Did you have someone in your family that handed them to you, or?
It was my friend in school, Billy Petrusowitz, gave me let me read my first copy of X-Men, and I kind of fell in love with that ever since.
Was it Claremont era?
Yeah, it was nice early stuff. It was great. My mother bought me a lot of the John Byrne Fantastic Four from the spinner rack at the 7-Eleven around the corner from my elementary school. So always had an interest in comics, moved from New York out to Phoenix, did the regular corporate 9 to 5 job stuff, ended up working for a hospice for several years. If you're familiar with hospice work, it's incredibly rewarding. It does take a toll on you emotionally, physically a little bit. And I needed a break from hospice. And I just said, I just need to get a part-time job. And I ended up back working at a Samurai Comics where I was working a couple of years prior. And I was just there and I was enjoying being a store manager and talking to everybody. And I had a friend who had gotten a job at Todd McFarlane Productions. And she started on the ground floor, kind of like interning his stuff, and just slowly worked her way up. And she was transitioning from the role of publishing coordinator, which is basically a fancy way of saying like air traffic controller. She managed when the files came in, make sure the pencils got to the inker got to the colorist, the color files got to the letterer, and then made sure that the production artists got the books put together on time and they were sent to the printer and all of that. So it was not a particularly glamorous job, but she was kind of taking over. It's incredibly important, yes. So she was kind of taking over and becoming Todd's kind of like right hand gal, if you will, because he's got a lot of companies, he's got toys, he's got comics, McFarlane Films, movie stuff that was happening. So she was kind of like becoming his right-hand person assistant to buffer all of that stuff. And they needed somebody to take over as publishing coordinator, excuse me. And he basically said, look, you know what needs to be done. Just find somebody that you trust. And I knew her for years, and I put out a comic anthology with a buddy of mine a few years prior, and she was one of the writers in that. And so we had just remained friends. And she was like, hey, do you want my job? That literally was the phone call. And I went, what? She goes, yeah, I'm moving to a different position. Do you want my job? And I said, yeah. And I was working at a comic book shop. So I was like, absolutely. She goes, Todd wants to meet you tomorrow. So I put on a suit and I went to the office with a resume. And because that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And Todd walks out of his office with no shoes on and introduces himself. He says, hey, I'm Todd. Let's go to the publishing office. And he took me to the publishing office and he goes, well, that's Shannon's old desk. Why don't you sit down and see how it fits? And we ended up talking for about 3 hours, and he hired me on the spot. And
okay, so
yeah,
it's like intrigued me. Okay, so I can take two things from that. One, either he'd already decided to hire you, really trusting her insight into who she picked, just be like, this is the guy. Was the feeling that the 3 hours was just, I'm just getting to know you before I hand you a first paycheck?
No, because Todd's if you've met him, he is incredibly gracious and such a nice man, but he is really tough to read sometimes. So I did not know where we were going and why we were talking about certain things. He would bring up the weirdest topics to talk about, and I think it was just to see how my brain worked a little bit. So I did not feel that this was a get and solid position when I walked in there, even after 3 hours, because how it ended was he's like, well, let me just show you around the office, see how it's laid out. And he takes me over to the CFO's office and he goes, this is Debbie. She's our CFO. I'll introduce you. And he goes, let's have a seat. And she kind of shakes my hand and he just gets up and walks out. And she goes, so did you have questions for me? And I went, no, Todd wanted me to meet you. And she just kind of rolls her eyes like, yeah, such Todd. So she goes out and she goes, Todd, what am I doing with this guy? And I just hear from down the hall, hire him. And that was how I got hired. And that was it. And then, so from there, I was publishing coordinator for a while. I started on issue 304. Mm-hmm. And then I said, hey, I want to be the editor. And he goes, why? Publishing coordinator sounds more important. I'm like, yeah, but nobody knows what a publishing coordinator is. Editor is the one everybody knows. So I changed my title to editor. And then I was like, I want to be editor in chief after about a year. And he goes, well, we were just talking about expanding the universe from one book which had been like that for 20 years, other than some mini series here and there, to 4 ongoing with the Spawn, King Spawn, Scorched, and Gunslinger. And he said that rollout's going to be about a year, because we're gonna give a couple of months between each one. We're not going to overload the market. It's also the height of COVID. We don't even know if this is going to work. So we started rolling them out, and he goes, if you can go the entire year, get all 4 books out, and not miss a single deadline with any of them, I'll make you editor-in-chief. And so we went through the entire year, and the last one we put out was Scorched, #1. Again, they were all oversized. They all broke records, each one. And then I was driving with my wife out to dinner, and my car plays like my text messages when I have the phone plugged in. And I told this story on the other show that I got a text message from Todd, and he goes, hey, I found, and it was just a text, and my car's reading it to me, and it says, hey, I found a mistake in Scorched #1. And I just went, oh, that's the worst. Oh, and I'm like waiting to hear what it is. And another one comes through, and he goes, you listed yourself as editor. It was supposed to be editor-in-chief. Congratulations. And that's how I found out, via a text.
That's a great way to find out.
Yeah. So it was a great story. And I know, it's one of those situations that, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I knew the right people. And I think it was Kurt Busiek that years ago said, once somebody figures out how to get into the comic book industry, the industry makes sure that that hole is closed. Because everybody's story seems to be very different.
Oh, it's true.
You don't just post on monster.com and get a job to write comics or to draw comics or to ink comics. So everybody's kind of got this story. It's like you have to be, I think, a very social individual, and you have to get to know a lot of people and earn their trust. And that's what kind of brings you into the purview and into the orbit of other people that are bigger names maybe. And eventually you're there with the people that are making decisions, and it works out for you.
Do you have any school background for editing, or is it just like you have a natural talent for?
I always wrote. I was always a writer. I always did a lot of creative writing classes growing up, but I went to school to be a kindergarten teacher. So only some of that carries over, because artists are fickle individuals, and they need a lot of coddling sometimes, because they can get very emotional. So I feel like that part of my college is certainly helpful, having to deal. And I'm not saying they're children. I'm just saying a lot of times there needs to be the right encouragement and the right coaxing to get them. There's a lot of moods to be handled when you're dealing with a lot of creative types. But that's it. Again, other than the creative side of it, no real business or editorial background. Like I said, I was just very, very lucky, and Todd appreciates what I do.
I think it's interesting for people to hear this, that like you've got Thomas, who says, kindergarten teacher to working hospice to working as manager at a comic book shop to working for a huge company that everybody in comic books knows. It's kind of a weird trajectory. I have a criminal justice postgraduate education, own a comic book store, of course, because that doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, exactly. And I met my wife in corporate America. We just assumed we would be that corporate America couple, and it just went very, very different directions. She got her MBA, and she's incredibly good at what she does. And I get to stay on the more creative side of things, which was always something that was of a bigger interest to me than just getting a big paycheck working at an investment firm, which I did for a little bit as well. Not incredibly fun. Yeah.
Well, it helps though, right? To have had your fingers in lots of different pies. You can see how things work well or not well in lots of different ways. And then you can apply them to what you're doing now, even though some things wouldn't seem to apply. Of course they do. So I have a crazy question for you that I always feel like I think I know the answer, but I don't really think I know entirely what it is. And I know a lot of other people are thinking the same question. So editor in general and editor-in-chief is so much more than making sure that all the dots are dotted and the words are spelled correctly and they make complete sentences. It's way different than all that, but try to explain what it entirely encompasses.
Yeah, 100%. And let's be honest, I don't shy away from it. I go to the Spawn Reddit. I go to the Spawn Facebook groups. I know Spawn has and not just Spawn the title, but the TMP books have been notorious in the past for having egregious spelling and grammatical errors. And that is it. But and people assume, again, that that's the only thing, that's the job. And it really isn't. Like I said before, publishing coordinator, when there was no editor there, it was just the publishing coordinator. It is managing a lot of those files, making sure those managing the books, managing the international contracts. So Brazil is producing comics for us, and Panini in Italy, and Delcourt in France, and Comite in Mexico. They're producing stuff for us. But it is management of the talent is honestly the biggest role, and making sure that everybody's producing. And going from one book when it was myself and one production artist, and then going to 4 books when it was myself and then my publishing coordinator, and 2 and then 1 intern of production artists, and now going to, I think at this particular moment we've got 14 different titles, not all of them ongoing, obviously some of them are miniseries and stuff like that, but are all in production. And I still only have 3 production artists and 1 publishing coordinator. So we are still an office of 5, not counting Todd. There are only 5 of us that produce all of the Spawn books, including all of the trades, the super deluxe, slipcase ones, all of the compendiums. We are doing all of it, and it is just 5 of us. And people just assume it's this massive thing. Like, how do they not have somebody? I get it. It kills me every time I flip open a book that has gone to press that I know I read through, and I go, what's the wrong there? Like, it slipped. It absolutely kills me. And there are no shortage of people on the internet to point that out to me.
Of course.
It is. But it happens. I won't say who, but I would argue, as a retailer, you could probably guess what the biggest new series that got launched from one of the top 2 companies were this year. And it's about a gentleman with horns and a bat symbol on his chest. There was 2 errors in the first issue that I caught after reading that. I'm like, okay, they have a much bigger editorial staff than we do, but it slips by. And one of my staff did a thing, and they said, over the course of a month, we read through 250,000 words just on the books that we're producing, and in various stages, meaning that's reading the scripts or reading the actual final lettering. And he goes, and if we miss 4 words over the course of all of the books, I'm not going to stress that. And when he said it to me like that, I'm like, all right, that's not really a big deal. 4 words out of 250,000. It's annoying. It really is when we see it.
It'll make you crazy, right?
It will make us crazy. And my wife knows. She'll be like, babe, just don't even worry about it. But it does happen. And I'm aware it happens, guys. So if there's any Spawn fans watching it, we don't ignore it. We're not trying. It's not that we don't care. It's just that there could be more of us there. And right now there isn't. There's 5 of us, and we've just all got a million things on our plate. And my biggest goal is to make sure none of our books are going out late.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Because that not just doesn't affect us, that affects you guys down the line as retailers, because that throws everything off. It affects our printers, because then they have to rejigger their schedule because they've got other image books that they're supposed to be printing. So that's the biggest, most important thing, is not getting books out late. But yes, we do occasionally misspell a word.
So another question I have, I don't know if it's the editor-in-chief's purview, but continuity always feels like, how in the world do people, even in a universe that's kind of encapsulated like Spawn, how do you guys keep all of the characters that have appeared, the whens, who died, who can't possibly, have a cameo because, they're in another universe? Or how do you guys keep all of that? Is there like a big spider web thing on a wall somewhere where you're like, this one's connected to that one?
No, it's literally just me. I say literally me, but my staff as well. No, that's our job. Luckily, we work with some really talented writers. I try to meet with them at least once or twice a week. You've got Rory McConville, who's doing wonderfully on King Spawn. John Layman of Chew fame doing Scorched right now. And then there's just a bunch of miniseries, and most of those can kind of fit it's not as worrisome. Like the current Medieval Spawn miniseries that's launching next month is just going to be set in the past, so it doesn't really have to worry what's going on. So we kind of talk it out. They say, hey, I want to use this, and a lot of times all three of us will get on a phone call, and then John and Rory will start spinning off and going, hey, I was thinking about having so and so show up. Are you using Reaper for anything, or is Soul Crusher going to be showing up in King Spawn, or that kind of stuff? So it really helps doing that. But I'll be completely honest. There's times where they'll be like, when was the last time so and so showed up? And I'll be like, oof, I don't know. But I've got a physical library in my office at the office today. I'm working out of the house that has literally at least one of everything that Todd has ever printed going back to his DC Marvel days. And then every single cover, every single variant, every single issue of anything Spawn, all in alphabet, all in numerical order, excuse me. So I can go pull from stuff. And then sometimes you have to start it, but I go online. I'll check out the Spawn archive because the guys that run that are doing great jobs. And it's like, where's my starting point? Where's the... Okay, cool. Then I'll pull the issues. And so when you see the little editorial notes, which I always loved in comics, when you saw the little note from Ed, and for the longest time, I thought it was actually some guy named Ed. Didn't realize that stood for editor as a child. Yeah, you didn't either, right? I was like, man, Ed's
I was this many years old until I knew that.
Because we always put Thomas. Todd always put Todd when he was the editor in chief, and so when I took over, he just made it Thomas. But that's how we do it. So that's how when you see those notes, it's like we're literally looking through issues to double check last appearances, last pages, who's alive, who's dead, that kind of thing. And that, to me, honestly, that's one of the fun parts of the job. I really like managing and getting knee deep into the lore because I'm always learning something. I've read, from my time that I started, I've read everything that they've put out. I don't remember it all. Some of it I've read more than once, but I have read everything that we have as TMP has put out. But there's always stuff that's like, oh, that one character, Admonisher, what issue was that? Oh my gosh. So you got to find that. And I enjoy that. That's a very fun part of my job, is getting to dig through the archives and find stuff.
That sounds awesome. All right. We do have a question from our online here. It says, when you get a chance, ask us about the Magic universe with Nyx.
So, yes, I know Tony online. So when we were talking about doing the book Black Ritual, that came to us, and I'll give 100% of the credit to Nat Jones, former artist on Spawn, really did incredible work with Jay Fodas on the 68, which was a zombie book that took place in Vietnam. Absolutely amazing artist. Drew Nyx when she was the original She-Spawn back in the day. So he's always had a love for that character, and he ran into Todd at Calgary Comic-Con and said, hey, I want to do a book about Nyx. Can I do that? And Todd said, here's my editor-in-chief's email. Email him. Sure, we'll set it up. We'll get it taken care of. I'd love to work with you again. So Naka emails me. We get on a few calls, and he's like, I want to bring Nyx back, and I want to do that. I'm like, well, do you know where she is right now? And he goes, I have no clue. I haven't read in years. I go, she's the Queen of Hell.
I know.
And he goes, he goes, I don't want to do the Queen of Hell. Like, I want to bring like the goth witch back because she's kind of like my wife. Like, I want that character back. And I'm like, well, she's going to be Queen of Hell for a while. Like, she's the new Malbolgia. So let's think about it. And I had a layover. I was heading back from New York. My flight got delayed, and I was in the airport lounge, and I was thinking about it, and I ended up writing a seven issue treatment while I was in the airport. And I sent it over to Nat and Todd, and I said, what do you guys think about doing something like this? And they both loved it. And what that was is setting the book right after issue 184, which was her last appearance prior to her showing up again in 300 and getting shot in the head. So we don't know where she was or what she was doing. So that's the start to get to the answer of Tony's question. Then she was also a witch, and the people that were writing her back in the day, which was, I think it was a lot of David Hine and Todd, they were just using witch, and she's Wiccan, and that was it. And magic just meant she can shoot laser blasts that were a different color than Spawn's. Both Nat and I have an acute interest in the occult personally. So when we started talking about this, he's like, I don't want to just say she's Wiccan and she shoots laser blasts. Like, I would love to incorporate the realistic use of magic, practical magic. And I was like, well, that's cool, because here, check out my book and my library. He's like, oh, you own that book? You know, that kind of thing. So it just kicked off into us going, okay, let's do this. We're going to say she's a witch. We're going to remove the term Wiccan, because that's a specific practice, and actually use, hey, yes, is there going to be laser blasts because it's a comic book? Certainly. But the use of some of the terminology, the use of some of the reference material that she has to utilize, the types of spells and some of the rituals that she's going to do are based on actual practical books and grimoires and experiences that him and I have both had. So we really wanted to bring in a more realistic approach to what magic means in the Spawn universe, as opposed to just going like this with your hands and then glowing discs appear and that just means magic. So we decided to do that. And then when Todd was kind of, well, what does that mean for the Spawn universe? I go, well, it means we're introducing a third thing. You have introduced heaven and hell. Heaven has divine energy blasts and hell has green necroplasm. Magic is different. Magic is people that have been able to harness raw cosmic energy of the universe and manipulate it to an effect. They are not getting powers from heaven or hell. They are their own thing. They've got their own thoughts, processes. They've got their own threats that they're dealing with. And that's something that I hope people think about when they decide whether or not they want to pick up Nyx #1, because while, yes, it is fully entrenched into the Spawn universe, if you don't care about Spawn or you have never read Spawn, you could pick up that book. And yeah, there's a little bit for the couple of first 2 or 3 pages that harken back to that original story. But this is a standalone book. You just want a strong female character. You want a book about witches. You want a book about her dealing with her problems and the fallout of just leading a very odd life. You can just read this book without any Spawn knowledge whatsoever. He's not going to show up in it. We're just going to go and tell her story.
Yeah, so I'm like, probably people are aware of characters like, everyone knows Al, that's Spawn, and then Wanda, wife, and probably at this point no Cyan. But there were some characters I saw pop up, no spoilery things, because this is in the going back to pre-183 or whatever, but mention Mammon and Morana, and I don't remember those characters. It's been a while since I've delved into those older issues. What are they, just like associated with Malbolgia character?
This was, I believe, that was after Malbolgia was dead and Mammon was struggling and fighting to take over Hell. And he had made a deal with Nyx at one point. The good thing is, like, I can point anybody to the trade that has the story that those pages were included from, because it's very easy to find. But yeah, Mammon is a demon, and he is a character that's shown up a lot in the Spawn lore. Morana was basically, he was trying to convince Wanda that this is her daughter from the future. And so basically all we really wanted to do, Nat and I, were like, we're going to acknowledge that this was the last time you saw Nyx. So if you go by issue 184 and look at it, it's those panels. Nat redrew them in his own style, but that is the bit of story that's happening. But once that ends, everything else is fresh with completely new characters. That was just kind of a nod to the Spawn fans going, you remember this, you know who Mammon is. And then we're going to move on. And then going from there, it's all fresh and new story with new characters.
And we see when Nyx shows up in New York City, a couple of things that I don't know that we've seen before. I know you're saying that magic is now being introduced. So are you said you were trying to be accurate. So the runes or the
sigils.
The sigils, are those
are ones that
for your universe or already exist?
It was a combination of both.
Okay.
Art-wise, Nat utilized from like real sources of stuff.
So that's really cool.
And then like all of those characters that you saw in the various scenes, those are all new characters, including the Puritan, who's on covers B and C. Yeah. And there's one page in there, and I was telling Nat, I was like, it would be really cool. Like, have you ever seen the Exorcist movie poster? And I'm sure you know exactly which page I'm talking about. And he's like, yeah, I think I could do something like that. And then he turned in, I'm like, that's incredible. That was such an incredible page. So the Puritan is a new character to the universe. He's a witch hunter, a witch finder. And his background harkens back from a lineage that goes all the way back pre-Mayflower to the witch hunters in England, and he's not thousands of years old or hundreds of years old. He's just a modern guy, but he still adheres to those practices. And when we were coming up with him, I told Nan, I was like, I'm going to call him the Puritan, and he goes, we're not going to give him like a big hat, right? Like a big pilgrim hat. And I go, no, I 100% don't want him to have a pilgrim hat, but I would love for him to have a blunderbuss, the big rifle, the big guns that they had. And so he gave him the blunderbuss. And then Jonathan Glapian, who is one of my best friends and one of my favorite artists, was kind enough, in the middle of him doing his Curse of Shirley Johnson book, to do this cover for us, which I absolutely loved. And I think it just really kind of just sets the sinisterness of him. So you'll see quite a bit of him in this book as he's hunting down these people.
The thing I like about his character design is there's something very extremely creepy about a character that you cannot see their eyes, and to give them glasses that are always reflecting red. It's just like, yeah, it's like you can't really know a person until you can see into their eyes, I think. So like, I don't know whether I like the side he's on of, like, you know, trying to do the heavenly part, but I am kind of freaked out by the fact that he's just kind of being, he himself looks like a very dark character. Maybe it's because of what he has to do. Oh no, we have a frozen. Maybe it's me frozen. If you can't see me moving, this is a question from Pastor Michael. Do we have a live image for me? I'm so sorry.
I can see you.
Okay.
So while we're waiting on maybe Thomas to unfreeze, let's do this. This is the A cover for the book. This is the Nat Jones cover. And now Miss Jen has disappeared because I was unprepared for this moment for the shift. But anyway, there's Nat Jones cover. Here is the Jonathan Glapian cover. That's the B. This is the C cover, which is a variant of the B Jonathan Glapian cover. And then the one I'm most looking forward to, because I'm going to have artists play fun games with, the D cover, the all black. Miss Jen, you were here already.
Oh, okay.
So now you're here twice.
Okay.
And there he is.
Hey, I'm sorry about that, guys.
No, we're good. It's
so weird. I thought from my screen it showed me dropping out of the show too. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what it showed for me.
I'm guessing StreamYard, which has been extremely buggy lately, is getting buggier. So we're good. But yeah, so blank all black cover, Jonathan Glapian variant, Virgin, super cool neon cross variant. That's this is the C cover. The B cover is, Blunderbuss. And the A cover is Nat Jones.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Nat did a phenomenal job on setting the colors and the tones on that. So it's absolutely beautiful. I do see that. I saw that question. I think this is a great one. So Spawn isn't going to show up in this book, other than maybe some flashbacks, simply because if you've read the Spawn books, Al Simmons kills himself very soon after issue 184. So he is dead for the majority of the time frame that this book is taking place in. And this is when we had the new Spawn, Jim Downing, who was kind of learning his own things. However, yes, the goal is, and I guess I can say it here first because I don't think we've really mentioned it. The goal that Nat and I have is we want to do 3 7-issue miniseries, 3 separate stories that are going to be leading up to issue 300 and how she got from point A to point B. And that's kind of the goal, is what her journey is that takes her from there. And Todd really likes the idea of how magic is being portrayed in this. So I could certainly see the aspect of, once this miniseries is done, and potentially once the resolution of what her being the Queen of Hell means to the mainstream Spawn universe, that some of these characters would become part of the mainstream Spawn universe. There are plans to kind of keep this spoke of the Spawn wheel, this magic side of things, going and moving forward quite a bit. I like to think of this, and I'm not trying to say this is because I'm this phenomenal writer. I would love for this side of the Spawn universe to be kind of almost like the Vertigo side of things. We're very rarely going to deal with the war between heaven and hell, or just have demons running around, or vampires, stuff like that. We'd like to deal with a little bit more of the serious, more esoteric stuff, while still being part of the main Spawn universe.
And I've been maybe I haven't remembered where things are set for a long time. Has New York City always been central?
For the first chunk of Spawn time, he was always in New York, but now most of the books are all over the place. For her, simply because my background in New York and growing up there, and this kind of being where Al's start was in the beginning of Spawn in 1992, I wanted to bring her back to New York City and kind of have her dealing with, she's an outcast from all of the covens in New York, because what she was doing was so against what their belief system was. They look at hell spawns of like, ugh, they're just demon hell spawns. You're hanging out with hell spawns and you're making deals with mammon. Like, this is beneath us. We're beyond that. And how dare you do that? So she's trying to kind of reconnect with some of the people that were important to her prior to her time with Spawn and Al, and kind of regrow some of those connections. So you see her trying to kind of integrate herself back into the culture of New York City that exists. And then there's some ideas of like, yeah, we all know that crazy stuff happens, but they were pretty self-isolated as witches in New York City, and you're going to find out why and what all that means. And the long overarching story is they finally agree to kind of let her in a little bit, because several young witches, new initiates, have gone missing. And they don't know why at first. And so they're like, look, the covens, who they're all practicing magic, but they're all practicing in their own ways. So you've got like the Upper East Side, and they're all the rich ladies that can trace their lineage back to the Mayflower. So they're kind of hoity-toity Agatha Harkness style witches. And then you've got, in Spanish Harlem, you've got a lot of practitioners that are leaning more into brujeria and Santa Muerte. And you've got in Harlem, you've got that kind of the Afro-Caribbean cultures. And some of these practices are open and some of them are very, very closed, and they're culturally guarded. And this is stuff that Nat and I wanted to bring into this book, that while they all have their own practices and they all might have their own deities or faith systems attached to them, what they're all doing is the same. Still being able to just control this energy and manifest it in a way that benefits them, even though their deities might be completely different. But there's been a lot of mistrust because some of these young initiates have gone missing. So they kind of look at Nyx as like, we know you're not part of any of these covens because you're kind of an outcast. So we know you probably don't have anything to do with it. So why don't you want to earn our trust back? Figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. You're now our Columbo that has to figure out why this is happening to us. And maybe that might earn your way back in, and we might trust you again.
I do have a question. You can say we can't answer anything about it because of ongoing storyline, but it introduced in issue 1 is the kind of like the city has kind of almost like an alarm system for when people enter the city with magical abilities, and it kind of leaves it. And my first thought is, who's strong enough to make such a thing? And so the question to me is like, is it the group of them all together, or is there somebody we haven't seen yet?
No, it's actually it was just showcasing that at times in the past the various covens did work together, and this was for the benefit of all of them. And to this day, even though they might not be working together, they're almost like the mafia a little bit. There's the different families, and while there are certain things they still do together and they'll respect certain things, they still might get into little street fights if the lower level people kind of run into each other, kind of thing. But for the most part, the elders of the various covens realize, hey, we should still maintain this alarm because if somebody comes in with they want to do us harm, we need to be aware of it. So those agreements kind of still stand.
I love. I wish I could be like in your head when you're sitting at the airport at your layover, coming up with this entire arc of ideas. But it just seems like what seems like when you've said it seems like a simple idea of adding magic is so groundbreaking. It like opens up so many storytelling possibilities for the Spawn universe that don't have to like negate anything that exists, but just adds more richness to it. Was it your idea to be like, I'm going to do something groundbreaking, or you're just like, I just need to find a way to get Nyx in here?
I've been wanting to introduce, again, just due to my own personal thought process, I've been wanting to figure out a way to bring magic into the Spawn universe for a while. This isn't the first story or characters that I've kind of created on the side with where's the best place to fit these in that deal with magic in this universe. It was just finding the right place and the right time. And Nyx turned out, instead of introducing a completely brand new character, a character that is a fan favorite like Nyx, coming back into it with simply because Nat was like, hey, I want to do it again. And Todd was like, well, go for it. It was just the perfect time to do it. So she, instead of some of these other characters, she's going to be the one that kind of introduces this part of the Spawn universe to the readership. And that's something that we've been doing. And I'll be honest, maybe we have not done this as effectively as we had hoped. Internally, we always knew that when we introduced the first 3 new books, King Spawn, Gunslinger, and Scorch, that those were going to be books that the Spawn fans were going to buy. You're reading Spawn, you're probably going to buy the other 3. Then when we started introducing the second wave of books, those were ones that were, in some cases, a little bit further away from Al Simmons, who's obviously the center of our universe. So you've got books like Misery, which was all about Cyan, and sure, he was a big part of her life, but that was still a book about her personal journey. And then you've got books like Rat City, which is just like Erica Schultz just came to us and said, I mean, I really like cyberpunk. I really like, Altered Carbon and Blade Runner. Can we just really do like cool. this cool, like futuristic? It doesn't even have to be the definitive future. It could just be a potential thing, but I just want to say, like, I just want to set a book in this time period. And we love that idea. And then we've had a few others. And now this is the third wave of these re-releases. And now you've got books like this. You've got books like Bloodletter from Tim Seeley and Joseph Illich coming out. And those too. Yeah, they're phenomenal. And they're dipping their toe into the magic side of things again. Their character is also somebody that utilizes magic in a very different way than Nyx. So it's very exciting. And Joe and I have been like, crossover? Like, maybe we might see this. But what we've been trying to do and trying to get out, and Todd said it in his interviews, but I guess we have to scream it from the rooftops. We don't expect a Spawn fan that reads Spawn and loves Al to buy every book that TMP puts out. Because the same way I don't expect a Daredevil fan to buy every book that Marvel puts out. What we decided to do is, instead of putting books where Al is the center of that orbit and the characters are all just revolving around his actions, Todd and I were like, but what if your girlfriend doesn't like Spawn, or your boyfriend, or your mother, your brother, your sister, your dad, and you want them to enjoy comics too? Well, here's some other books that are in our universe. They're part of the Spawn universe, but you don't need to know about Spawn. Maybe you just have a girlfriend that's like, man, I just really like strong female characters. Read Misery. It's a great book. Cyan's a phenomenal character. I like Law and Order SVU. Check out Sam and Twitch. Spawn doesn't show up in it. Read Sam and Twitch. It's just good detective stories. And that's what we're trying to do with these books. And again, maybe we haven't done well enough in saying that, but no, we're not expecting you, because I do see it. We announced a new book and somebody's like, oh, Todd's trying to kill us. No, I just want you to have options, man. I just want you to go, I know my brother doesn't like Spawn, but you know what? He might like Rat City. Like, he's plays that cyberpunk video game all the time. And this is kind of like that future where it's all evil corporations and stuff like that. So that's really what we're trying to do with our current books, is just go, we just want to give you different options, just like Marvel does, just like DC does, different books for different types of readers and different types of fandoms. And hopefully we do a bunch that people dig. And if we don't, then they stop being sold, and we'll try some new stuff.
I can't imagine such a thing. I mean, to me, it still makes me so happy that one of the books that was going on when I first started in comic books is still just as good now. And I have like this weird love-hate with those small print ones where people for some reason decided to wander away for a little while. But you want to know what's so cool now is that there's so many people that are trying to hunt those down. There's a whole new generation of people that are like, I got to fill in that whole collection because it's not good enough to have the graphic novels, although they probably have those too. They love the universe enough to be like, I'll pay $15 an issue to make sure that it's filled in.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Another one that I always love mentioning, because again, I think it's for us, meaning TMP and Todd McFarlane, an oddball, is Gail Simone writing a She-Spawn miniseries for us. And it is so different and it is so beautiful. And Iguara, who's doing the art, it's absolutely phenomenal what they've put down on paper. And I'm so excited for people to read that. It's going to be huge. And then probably the most exciting book of the year, and that's not even my own, is Jonathan Galapian and Daniel Enriquez, The Curse of Shirley Johnson. So if you're a retailer, you might have had an opportunity to see the PDF on that. That art is just, it's sensational. I feel that that's going to be our biggest book of the year.
So you think that's going to be the most surprising that people are going to be?
Yeah. I think people are going to look at that and be like, this is not what I expected. This is this is insane. This is beautiful. This is such an interesting story. And again, ties into Spawn. There's a few Spawn characters, but it's a completely original story talking about and showing areas of the Spawn universe that we've never really even ventured into before.
That's awesome. Because I remember back when he announced the universe, he said something like 15. Has the number changed for how many titles he intends to, when all said is done, as being separate from Spawn proper?
You know, it's a number that's always fluctuating. We've had titles and we've just said, you know what? Look, at first we were like, everything's going to be an ongoing. We just realized that's just not every title, not every book needs to get it. A perfect example is Gail. I told Gail I'm a huge fan of Gail Simone, and I said, we will let you do this for as long as you want. And she said to us, she was like, I really love just getting one solid idea, getting 5 or 6 issues, and then getting out. She goes, other than Birds of Prey, which I could write for the rest of my life, I really just want to give you a really great She-Spawn. And then maybe in a year or two, I come back and I'll do another one. So we started going, okay, maybe some of these creators, they don't want to necessarily do an ongoing book and they want to do a quickie. So they're doing these short miniseries. Jimmy Palmiotti was the exact opposite. I originally was going to Jimmy going, I really want you to write Sam and Twitch. I love your crime stuff. And then he finally gets on the call with myself and Todd. He goes, yeah, I'm so burned out on crime. Like, can I do a Western? And we're like, wait, what? Jimmy wants to do a Western? I figured after 128 issues of Jonah Hex, you'd be burnt out on doing Westerns. He goes, it's my favorite thing to write. I love writing Westerns. I love them. And so Todd was like, you can write that until you don't want to write it. And that's where Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger Spawn came. It's just Gunslinger Spawn, but this is pre him coming to the present day. And it's just Old West. And I keep describing it as it's 310 to Yuma meets Bone Tomahawk. It's just old school Western violence. That's it. And it's phenomenal. And so he's like, I'll write that until you guys kick me off the book. So we've decided, instead of putting a definitive number, let the creatives kind of decide what they feel they can bring to the table in the best way possible. And that's something that really has never had the opportunity to happen before, because most of it was very much under Todd's direction himself. And now you're finally getting some books where people are coming in and he's going, I never would have thought of that idea. That's great. I love that. So let's go with it. And we're doing some very, very interesting stuff.
Smart guy. I wonder, my question is kind of like, I wonder if when the Gunslinger Spawn was introduced, if he had any inkling it was be quite as popular as that character is now. Because I see that as like being it's got to be a surprise, right? That is like, because it kind of has a ridiculous look, but it's also awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can tell the stories now, because it's been years and years and years. It's the best Spawn. Yeah. Hey, Tony knows what's up. Tony knows what's up. I mean, I guess these are years and years and years ago stories, so I can spill some of the behind the scenes. So the gunslinger story, if you remember back, that was 184, 185. There was a few issues in a line where there was that was a 2-shot quick story, and then they did World War I Spawn, right after it, War Spawn and stuff. Those were fill-in issues because the main team was behind. So Brian Haberlin, who was editor-in-chief at the time, organized all of that to get okay, we can't just wait. We got to put books out. So they came up with the Gunslinger Spawn story and the War Spawn story. So those were, again, kind of fill-ins. And the Gunslinger Spawn was only because in 119, the story was Al Simmons calls all of the spawns throughout history to come help him, and Angelman needed this incredible giant spread of every kind of weird Cossack spawn and techno spawn. They was I don't think there was any direction. They were just draw as much as you want. But he just did this one where it's a gunslinger with the big hat and the trench coat all the way off in the distance, and it's the wind's blowing in. And I was all right, that's a cool shot. That's a really he got his own little cameo page. So they reached back to that issue and we just pulled some out and did those little quick stories. And then when we were looking to expand, that was one of the spawns that Todd's what about the gunslinger spawn? And it was there was a conversation of was he Al's grandpa? And I'm no, he wasn't Al's Al. I think Al's great grandfather was in the story, but it's not Al's great grandfather. And so we wrote him in, and then I had recently read those issues again, and I was well, if you read those issues, he's not a good dude. You got to think these are soldiers from hell. Al's the oddball that doesn't want to do evil things. Most of the spawns are evil because they're the so it's he's not a particularly good character that he can just be a hero. So we sat and we brainstormed and figured out how do we make him a hero, and that came about. So the Gunslinger story launched, and he showed up in Spawn for a little bit, and then he got his own series, and then all the fans started calling out, "Oh, did you guys retcon it? Because his name is Jeremiah Winston, and you guys are calling him Javi. You guys changed it." We're we didn't. You just don't have the full story. So when Jimmy came on board, we're Jimmy, do you want to tell the true origin? Because it all happens in the Old West. So that's what Jimmy's story is. Deadly Tales is the origin that shows where the character from 174 and 175, how he ends up in relation to the present day version of the character. And that's how I will leave that. But it is not a story that we retconned. We didn't forget it, because that's my job not to. It's a story we decided to build upon and draw out into something interesting. And Jimmy's going to take the reins on that, and he's just going to kill it.
I can imagine that anybody listening to this is then going to go, I need to add that to my pull box immediately.
Oh, you should. You should. It's one of it's one of my favorite books that we've got coming out right now.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We've been talking and having the best time ever. I am going to say you guys need to remember to go to your local comic shop and let them know what we talked about today, specifically the Nyx book, so you can find out how magic works in the Spawn universe. So you can be I was there when it all started.
Yep.
And support all these guys Nat Jones. You can tell really poured out everything onto the pages. I saw so beautiful. The color. Oh.
Yeah, he's doing everything. Inks, pencils, and colors himself. And I mean that whole scene in the alley where with the Puritan and the character of Maya. I mean, it's just Todd is very much the Marvel method way. So loose plots are what the artists get for the most part. Yeah. He does not like writing full script. So Nat got very, very loose plots, and he just was able to kind of just figure it out and what works. And he's like, hey, I turned this to a single page as opposed to a double page. And I put this, I'm like, no, man, this is beautiful. I'm never going to tell you what you're doing is wrong. I'll make my work. I'll make it work on my end. And so, yeah, so not really kind of harnessing him or putting him on a leash in any way, I think is just going to benefit this book. And I really, really hope that everybody who's watching this, when you finally get to read it, go, I know exactly that page that they were talking about. Oh my God, that was a really cool sequence, or that was a cool shot. And because I'm just absolutely loving it.
You will all be in love. Absolutely, for that page. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we got to finally sit down and talk. Fellow retailer to retailer, old school.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting your friends know that this was an amazing bunch of information that they should have. So definitely share it with them so that they don't be like, you were a bad friend and didn't tell me all this inside information I needed to know so I could get these books. So definitely let everybody know. Thank you again so much for your time. I know it is precious, and I'm so thankful for you spending time with us here.
I'm always available. If it's not even talking about my book, I'm always great out to proselytize about the Spawn universe. So if you guys ever need any Spawn info about what we're doing, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to jump on.
Oh, perfect. We'll absolutely do that. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on Talkin' Shop on The Experience. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Have a great one.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere The Experience is all the time.